to the big questions, a monthly 10-part series created by International Music Summit, curated in partnership with She Said So and presented in association with Pioneer DJ, Beatport and the Association for Electronic Music. This series aims to highlight and examine the important value issues around in the electronic music industry and inspire our community with intelligent conversation and debate. This month, we focus on the environment and sustainability, an urgent topic not just for our industry, but for the whole world. And in light of the UN's recent climate report, we are now in a code red for humanity warning. We need to understand what steps we must take to ensure our touring, performing, creation, and enjoyment of the music we love is done with minimal impact to the world around us. Tackling this topic will be DJ, producer, promoter, record label head, Bye Bye Plastic founder, and environmental activist BLONDISH in conversation with climate change expert Dr Gabrielle Walker, who holds a PhD from Cambridge University and has been at the forefront of climate challenge research and strategy for decades. The conversation will then be followed by analysis from industry experts hosted by the Association for Electronic Music. Moderated by Kikelomo, it features representatives from DGTL Festival, AFEM and a Greener Festival. We hope that the outcome of this discussion will be to gain an understanding of how we can adapt our behaviours moving forward and continue to build our industry on sustainable practices.
So my name is Viv, but many people call me Blondish. I'm an artist, electronic music artist in the music industry, I guess. Music is my passion, and I always thought it was just a DJ. But as I've been exploring music endlessly, been on this journey, I realized that my music has much more purpose than just playing in a club at 5 a.m. And there's no discredit to that either. But I see a much bigger purpose. And it evolved into, seeing how we can better the music industry, have less of a footprint. And that's where I realized that I can do something about the plastic footprint, So I started a foundation. I co-founded a foundation called Bye Bye Plastic with Camille, who's the super nerd on this. I'm more the visionary and networking and making things happen. And, I'm very involved also in crypto, and NFTs, and just moving technology forward and seeing how we can combine that with all our sustainability practices to help make change and push the movement forward before it's too late.
This is really cool, and I immediately am dying to ask you loads of questions. But before I do, I should blind date, say who I am and what I do, and so I guess I'm kind of the nerd. I'm kind of the uber nerd bit, but I try to be a little bit visionary and try to tell stories as well. So I'm sort of somewhere between those two. And climate change is my thing. I've been working on climate change for a really long time. And in various different ways as a scientist, in media, with politics and with business, and always trying to figure out how to stick them together in a way that can make real change happen. And both kind of on an individual level, but almost also kind of getting the whole system to change, make it easier for everyone to be able to do the right thing. And I think a lot of my work in that, because I write radio and TV programs, written books, magazine articles, I'm a storyteller. And I tell stories in words, not music. But at first, just like you, I thought storytelling was kind of enough on its own. And it began to feel like it's wonderful to do that. I feel alive when I'm storytelling, but I also feel like I have to use it for something more than just telling the story. Not to lecture, not to teach, but to excite and inspire and to engage and to listen and to find out stuff and to move in different interesting places. And right now it just feels like climate change is such a massive, defining, terrifying thing that it's poets and musicians and storytellers who are the humanity's secret weapon in actually how to fix it. So I'm trying to marry my scientist nerd side with my storytelling side to see what I can do to help fix all of this.
There's magic in that intersection for sure.
I hope so, and I'm desperately trying to find it in very difficult times. So tell me, I think I just said not trying to lecture or to inform, but to excite and to inspire. And you sort of said you felt like you wanted to go beyond the music to do something with it. And it always feels like there's a bit of a danger for it to become kind of do-goody and to lose the creativity and the purpose. How do you handle marrying a purpose with the music?
Honestly, it happens very naturally. I mean, I'm creating, I can give examples of my experience. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't feel right playing in a party with plastic anymore. So we made lots of efforts, you know, on, you know, wherever I have leverage. Right now I have leverage in that promoters and event producers would like to book me. So I have leverage right there where we can ask, okay, let's make this a plastic-free party. And it took me 2 years. Like, it was always about baby steps. You know, you can't just change from one thing to the next. Just a little side story, you know, like in 2011, I started meditating, and, you know, I realized I went to India and had this whole journey, you know, realizing my album, and I started getting pretty spiritual, you know what I mean? But I didn't want to alienate my fans and community. So I tried to relate to them, you know, taking baby steps. So bringing them along the journey with me. So I took that kind of practice and that knowledge into the plastic-free practices. So like, how do we take baby steps and evolve with the music industry? So we started just making the DJ booths plastic-free, because that's something that's quite simple to do. And people aren't going to judge it, or the promoters are not going to be like, no, we can't do that. They're like, okay, we can. So that's kind of your step in the door. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I'm doing it, is in baby steps.
I think I love that you said that, because I started meditating this year, like in December last year, and for years people have been telling me you should meditate, and I say I'm too impatient to meditate, and that's why they said that's why you should do it. Exactly. And I think what really intimidated me about meditating is I thought you had to go to some place in India and have loads of incense and all the right dongs, and you had to sit in a certain way, and you had to be able to do it for days. And then one of my friends said, you can just do 10 minutes. Sit on your chair, and when
we can actually do it right now.
I can really do that. And so and then I have every day. It's actually, and sometimes longer, and it made it really possible. So I think I love what you just said, because I think in my work in climate change, it's really I think there's a slight danger that there's if I say baby steps, I don't think that's transformative enough, but making it easy, making it feel possible. So it's not kind of, oh my God, the world is ending and there's nothing we can do, that kind of incredible doom-laden narrative that makes you all feel, my God, it's all impossible. I might as well just cover my head or pretend it's not happening. When you can say, no, look over here, there's something really cool we can do, and it will work, and this is how it works, and this is how you can be part of it. Then you can make it easy, but you can actually point them in the direction of things that are actually massively transformative. Because I think there's one danger now, you know, there's the famous supermarket that says every little helps. And I think certainly with climate change, we've gone beyond that point. You know, the IPCC report that just came out, the big report that was saying that just a couple of weeks ago, said code red for humanity. This is absolutely emergency. This is banging on the big red button. And that's actually, you know, that's where it can get really quite frightening. It is code red. But that's where we have to say, okay, we have to be really clever about this. Who are the people who can tell the story that can move everyone from it's impossible to look over here, this is how we do it? And I think
I have a question for you.
Yeah, go on.
So we realize that now the baby steps don't work, and we don't have time for the baby steps. But in my experience, I'm still dealing with a capitalistic music industry. I'm dealing with the fact that everyone couldn't do events for a year and a half, and they're just trying to survive. I'm dealing with all of that stuff. You know, there was one club I'm playing at in Miami space. For 2 years, I was trying to get them to go plastic free. And finally, this September, I'm finally able to get them, I'm able to do a plastic free event with them, which is great. It's monumental. And that can be used as a diving point or jump off point as an example for many other events. If they can do it, many other people can. But at this moment, that's still not enough. you know? And I guess my question to you is, I'm an artist. I have to travel to be an artist. I can, you know, do I go with my ethos and I say I'm not going to travel anymore? I don't feel like that's going to solve the situation. How can I get around this whole thing, you know, as an artist?
It's right to the heart of it. And when I said, so in a way, I'm not saying that small steps and baby steps and quick wins are a bad idea. They're a very good idea. And what they need to do is be pointing in the direction of something that can be really transformative. So you're right, it can take ages to persuade one really iconic club to do this. But once one club's done it, it shows that it's possible. And then, you know, this is where the cool kids are. Why aren't you doing it? Can become part of your story. And you're such a respected storyteller that's something that you can quickly get out there. And so it's like, you know, the baby step efforts. I think a lot about the importance of having not a snapshot mindset, but a kind of transition mindset.
Please explain that.
Okay, I'll try. The way that I think about it is we're trying to get to somewhere better. And you can say, oh, well, I wouldn't start, you know, that whole thing, you know, if you're trying to get there, I wouldn't start here. And that's no good. We are here. This is where we are. This is where we got to start. So if you first of all, if you just sort of say, you can say we have to change everything overnight, then it's either impossible and you give up, or you kind of make sort of, you make crazy demands of people that they feel like they can't do. So then it shuts down. Like if I say all planes should be grounded, I mean, they did get grounded over COVID, but if I say nobody should travel, then that's going to feel impossibly hard. So it doesn't happen. And we don't actually need everyone to stop traveling today. What we need is a plan and gradually changing from one way of doing it to another way of doing it and making sure you're pointing in that direction with everything you do. So I got a call from an airline, the chief operating officer of a big airline the other day. He said, look, I can get planes, Airbus has started making them. I can get planes that will be effectively zero emissions in 2035. And that's amazing.
With their fuel or what?
With hydrogen. With hydrogen.
Wow, this is what I've been manifesting. Amazing.
We all want that. So the reason that they're actually, Airbus is now making that is that we've convinced them, the world's convinced them that there's going to be a market for it. So people like you saying, I got to travel, but I want it to be clean. All of us saying that, the ones who influence the narrative are the ones who are influencing the people making the planes. But that's 2035, it's not now. So what can we do now to balance what needs to happen while pushing for the planes that we get in 2035 is one of the questions. And I'm very interested in a whole new field, a whole new set of technologies. What you basically need to do, what anyone needs to do in this space, either as an individual or as a collective, is figure out how to get emissions down as low as possible, as quickly as possible, and then figure out what to do with what's left behind. And then have a plan so that getting the emissions down as low as possible gets a bigger part and dealing with the rest gets a smaller part over the next 10 years. That's
right. So we bridge the gap. Right. So how can I actually do that? Because I have offset all of my carbons, but at the same time, I'm messaging the group that I offset to. I'm asking for content of like them actually building these electric stoves in Africa, but they're not sending it to me because I need that.
There's an issue. So if you think about offsets, what offsets are traditionally like avoidance offsets. What it is I put a ton of CO2 into the air, right? You put a ton of CO2 into the air. Damn, now we've got 2 tons. That's bad, right? So traditional offsets will say, well, I put a ton, and you were going to put a ton, but I pay you not to, right? So you were going to put a ton, and I pay you not to, but there's still a ton in the air. So what I'm looking at and what I'm currently working on is how you actually take CO2 back out of the air and bury it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in this case, what you do is you put a ton, you pay someone to take out a ton, and you're at zero, really genuinely zero. So I think changing to the cook stoves and all of that is going to be important for reducing the emissions in the first place. But to take away what you put in, it needs this new thing, carbon removals, take CO2 out of the sky. And there's some actually really cool ways to do it. Have you heard about sky diamonds?
I haven't. Please teach me.
Brilliantly
teach
bling.
us.
Yeah, so what you can actually do, there's a company that's now trying to do it, which is there are various ways you can catch the CO2. It's gone into the sky, you can take it back out again. You can blow fans through chemicals that catch it, right? And then what do you do with it? And one of the things you can do with it is you can squeeze it until it turns into diamonds. So you can actually wear a sky diamond that has removed CO2 from.
These are real, it's an actual diamond, or it's a CO2 diamond?
It's a diamond, it's an artificial diamond, it's made in a lab. But you can't tell the difference. If you got that and you looked at the diamond that had been made inside the earth, it would look exactly the same. But this one has been made out of CO2 taken from the sky.
That's actually a very good NFT project, because, you know, let's say, you know, a famous artist, Madonna's going around the world, and we remove her CO2 and make that into, you know, her CO2 emission offset is into this diamond. That has value.
Exactly. And that's a story. It's a wonderful story. But there's lots of other ways that you can do it. I mean, you can suck the CO2 out of the sky and you can bury it where the oil and gas came from in the first place. I completely love this. It's so poetic. It's like, we brought it out, we stick it back, we put it back where it shouldn't have come from in the first place. It's almost like just turning the valve the other way. So you suck it out and you put it back under the ground.
Well, it's circular in some,
like circular carbon. And then there's other ways in which you can, the rocks, some kinds of rocks, like rocks that come from volcanoes, they naturally suck up carbon dioxide from the air, but they do it over millions of years, so we can't wait. But if you grind them up really small, they do it faster. So you can actually get rocks to suck up the CO2 and then spread them out over fields, and the fields the soil gets better and the crops grow better, and they've taken it. There's lots of clever ways, if we're clever about it, that we can actually help fix this.
So if I'm about all tangible tools, it's like, how can we actually use this now? So are these systems set up? And like, how much volcanic rock would I have to, I mean, is this still called offsetting, or is it just called carbon removal?
I think it's better called carbon removals. And in fact, I set up a group that's actually trying to do this at the moment for exactly the reason that you're saying. So many people have said, what can I actually do about this? This organization is called Climate Healing. And what we're doing is we're figuring out which of the removals are available now, and how can we make it easy to get them and really trust them. But here's the funny thing about it. At the moment, there's not enough. There's more people that want them than are actually making them. And
Great.
So what we think is that the trick is to get more demand. And you think that sounds upside down. If there's too much demand, not enough supply, why would you go for more demand? And the reason is that if everyone's saying we want it, then the people who are making it go, okay, we can expand and we can expand and we can expand. It gives them the confidence, it gives them the finance, it gives them everything they need to be able to grow bigger. So what we're saying, everyone's asking for this. And if everyone's asking for this, then that industry is going to just really, really skyrocket. And that's what
we need to make a little movement. I'm an expert in how to create movements. So we have our rallying cry, we have the tribe. Now we need to make the tribe bigger, but we just need kind of some content around it to push it.
So I mean, if you think about this, so what this is first of all, I mean, like, you got to fly. So you fly, you try to minimize your flying, or, you know, do direct flights, or if it's a short haul, then go by train, which I think is much nicer anyway. But I'd always rather go by train, and that saves a lot. You know, so you try to be sensible about your travel. You look at the energy of the venues that you go to for climate. You know, what exactly, how are they doing their lighting and their sound and so on? Are they using renewable electricity? And if so, could they easily switch, or could they switch over time, or can you actually? And I think lots of these venues, when they get pressure from artists, they think we're going to have to do this, and so that's when they start switching. So there's the energy, there's the minimizing travel, there's the doing everything you can, there's the food sometimes at festivals. You do everything you can to kind of do switches that will work now, then you calculate what's left, and then you buy the removals from that. And gradually, say it's like, you know, 30% now that you can cut down, and 70% you have to buy removals. And the plan is that you shift that so it becomes like 70% you do now and 30% removals, and less and less and less, until finally we solve this problem. And that buys time for the likes of, you know, the airlines to the airplane makers to build new planes, and the whole system to be able to switch. And it has to be both.
Sorry, yeah. It buys us time as humanity to survive, exactly. Potentially. So can you please suggest, I don't know if the carbon removal systems, if you can, maybe we can add it somehow on this. Sure. We can actually use it already. Yeah. Because the offsets is not enough for me, and also, you know, there's only certain. I gotta fly, and I can't get the guys to change the lighting. You know, I think each individual stakeholder of the music industry can do it on their own faster than I can get other people to change, you know?
I mean, I think in a way it's as much that if you're telling the story and saying, this is important, this can be done, these are the people that can help you, it's not as hard as you think.
Yeah,
then
exactly.
It's actually, and that's why I was saying before that it is, the code red is terrifying. That big red button that we have to press is terrifying, and it is very, very urgent. But at the same time, there's plenty that we can do. So we just need to get creative and inventive and use our superpowers, right? And if your superpower is music and storytelling and seeing what needs to happen in the world and changing it, that's the superpower of an artist. Artists have always imagined the world to be different and then help people feel it that way too. And so within this entire industry, this is a possibility of using that superpower to change that narrative. We cut down what we can right now, we remove what we can't right now, and we have a plan, and we're actually pressurizing all of the groups around us to follow that same pattern, to have a plan so that in 10 years' time, we don't have to call it net zero, we can call it zero, because we've actually found a way. There is actually 15 years or however long it takes, because all around us, the systems are changing because we're helping make them change by changing this story.
I'm optimistic about that, but I just have one other thing that I'm dealing with right now. So I would love, while I have you here, I would love to ask you. Right now, I feel like we have all this, we have this consumer level. I find myself a consumer, okay? Because I just started getting into politics. We were just these naive, innocent, people in the music industry that want some change to happen. But then we realize we're actually up against this whole other layer of institutions and, systems.
Yeah.
And systems. And, we're getting into politics now, and I have to find out who my tribe is in the politics, mostly in the US right now, because that's where we can make change the quickest, I feel. So I'm getting into that game, but I'm hitting some roadblocks somewhere, especially when it has to do with, lobbying and, the plastics industry, and everyone pays everyone things. So I want to get, how do we change the narrative there? Because anytime that it gets to kind of a government decision, sometimes we get stopped just because these guys are supporting that governor, you know what I mean? Like, how can we make the plastics and oil industry make more money in crypto or something? So, the money doesn't matter to them anymore.
Yeah. I think that's partly the game as well. It's just it's changing the incentives, changing the story. And I love that you're getting involved in the whole politics of it as well. It is, I mean, there are people who are very, very, very entrenched who are really trying to stop a lot of this. But I think the sort of good news that I would say is that I work a lot with businesses, and I work with all sectors. I work with NGOs, I work with Greenpeace, but I also work with oil and gas companies, and I work with everyone. And basically, my philosophy in this is we need everyone around the table and everything on the table. And there are some absolute bastards out there. There are some real bad guys who are just trying to stop it, but fewer than you think. And I think more people I'm meeting who really want to do something but feel like that they're trapped because the system around them isn't letting them. And that's where, first of all, I'd say that's where narrative is a superpower, be able to tell a story. Because if you give a story that says, look, this is how you can be part of this, and this is how you can have a future in it, but not going the way you have been going, but going in a different way. And that's partly my job. So my team and I and lots of people around us are actually finding ways that the industries, steel and cement, cement's actually responsible for 8% of global emissions, which is more than twice as much as all aviation in the world. But everyone needs cement, and they're operating on really tight margins, and they just don't know what to do. So I and a lot of other people are trying to find solutions for that, and there are good solutions, and trying to make it happen and figure out what needs to change. But I think first of all, it's powerful to have a yes and story. So I think we keep bumping up against in plastics and in climate change and in many other serious issues. It's kind of my solution, not yours, and it's you have to be very pure, you have to be very perfect, and if you're not pure and perfect, then you're not part of the movement. And that's okay if you want to be a kind of side movement, but if you really want to change the whole world, it has to bring everyone in. And so there has to be a part of this that everyone can connect to. And I just think about this very brilliant, very humble guy who grew up in the the Great Plains in North Dakota, and went to Washington, D.C. and worked for a well-known environmental NGO, and thought, well, they don't speak any of the language that I heard back at home. They're just alienating the people that I know. But then he'd go back home and the people at home would be saying, oh, climate change, that's a load of rubbish. And he'd be thinking, well, they're not speaking it either. So he figured out how to build bridges. And he worked out something that he wanted to happen, a particular tax credit, as it happened, that would help in the climate game. So what he did was he got loads of environmental NGOs, he got oil and gas companies, he got industrial people, he got trade unionists, and he got them all to talk to each other. And they all started finding, well, actually, if we did it this way, that would help me, and that would help me, and that would help me. And then they found a Republican senator and a Democrat senator, both of whom were willing to sponsor it for different reasons. The Republican because it would bring jobs, the Democrat because it was climate. And then together they put it through Capitol Hill. And it had the trade unions, the industrial players, the oil and gas companies, and the environmental NGOs all saying they wanted it. And it had a Republican and a Democrat, so it just went on through.
Amazing. So a diverse group of stakeholders, all from all walks of the industry, so that there's, feels like one united team.
Yeah. So then there's something in it for everyone. And there's also, you're not saying it has to be my pure vision of why we're doing this and exactly how we're doing it. But you actually, if you can just open it up enough, then that happened, that climate legislation sailed through under Trump's administration without any problem at all, because it was being sponsored by people from right across all those divides.
Great, so that's great advice. That's great advice.
It's not the only way. So sometimes you also have to just like get your head down and just run at it like a bull. But I think that connecting, especially music, good at that, right? What's your question?
Well, music is the greatest connector. We're all frequency, right? I have another question for you, actually. So there's another kind of roadblock that we have. It's greenwashing, where we have all these beautiful products that are coming into our music industry that, people without the education, because it's very hard to navigate. When you see an aluminum bottle, you think it's great. It's a solution. But then, some of these products that are coming into the music industry and coming in hard because they have funding from big businesses, they're not actually correct solutions. They could have BPA in them as well. Like we're running into all this stuff. What is, we at Bye Bye Plastic, we provide a lot of education, but we can't provide education for the whole music industry because there's so many different pockets of the industry. So how can we potentially stop this greenwashing from happening in our industry? Because a lot of people, for instance, are transitioning to this certain aluminum bottle, but it has BPA in it. You know what I mean? So it's not helping us.
Yeah. So I think I've got two suggestions for this, and one of them is, if I had the answer, obviously I would have immediately used it, and you'd already know it because it would be happening all over the world, and it is an issue. And right now, so many parts of the sort of climate solutions, it is a bit of a wild west. There are some areas that have really good kind of, unless it has this standard on it, don't buy it, and have really solid, but they tend to have been around for quite a long time. And all of this new, the stuff around plastics, the stuff around removals, that's another one where it's just, how do I even know which are the ones where you just give me a piece of paper saying, don't worry, we did it, or one that will actually go in and stay. And so it is an important question. And I think, first of all, we sort of have to do our best with what we've got right now. And one thing that's important in this space, and it's especially important in removals, is that there's some technologies that you can say that's pretty likely to work, that's doing well. Those are good people, they've got good backers, that it's really likely to happen, so we'll go with those. Those, have to make a bit of a judgment call, while the standard setters are catching up. And so some of those might not work out. In good faith, you have to try and do it. But the second thing is, you can also, if there's the, I've done my bits, now I can get on with it. You have to have people who, you have to have your Uber nerds who know what the real story is. And I've forgotten the name of your own Uber nerd, but everyone should have one where you can actually say, what's the real story? And then for the education point of view in the music industry, your superpower is that people trust you and listen to you, and you can reach them. You know, nobody's got a favorite politician, or at least probably nobody, but everyone's got a favorite musician. So you're in a position now where you can really, your responsibility is to try and understand as best you can what you think the story should be, and then tell that story. But you don't have to do it all. You don't even have to do it all in the electronics industry, but what you do probably have to do, if you care, is find other people who you can help to do what you're doing. So are there, in other parts of the music industry, I bet there's plenty of people who are going, oh my God, what do we do about plastics? I don't know where to start. And you've already been leading in this. So are there people that you can help set up what you've set up? Who are the narrative setters? Who are the ones who will be trusted? Where are the websites or the places where people go to find out things about music?
Yeah, we're doing that actually.
And so well, you find the people who you can make into champions, and they can do it, and then they can make people into champions, and they can do it, and it can just spread.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. But right now we're realizing that it's hard to organize the herd, not the farm, the farm animals. But we just figured out that we can all do that through the blockchain. So we're setting up a whole framework through creator, like social tokens through that, and we're giving utility to them. So anyone who wants to be a green warrior, we're going to give utility to that token and incentivize them, and actually we can build wealth and abundance through that token while they're doing good.
I think that the blockchain, I want to come back to that because it's a really brilliant idea. And I think what I was just suggesting was something a little bit different, at least I think it was, which is that you yourself have done this thing. You've actually, you cared enough. And so you set up your organization, you've got this mechanism, you've got a place where the education materials go. And the thing is, how can you scale that now? You can't do it all yourself, but can you find others who can be inspired by you, who can do what you've done in other parts of the industry, individual people who you turn into champions. And then you just have to have faith, they go off and do it. You don't, if they want help, they can come back to you. And I think I'm saying this because anyone can do this. I mean, you're in a fabulous position to do it because you're so respected and you're right at the heart of the music industry. Anyone in the music industry can do this, can figure out some part of this that they can do something about, and then help other people to do the same thing. Or find somebody who's doing something where you think that's really cool and figure out how you can help them or how you can do it yourself. So we don't need to keep reinventing it. We can use that power of human champions. And then separately, the use of blockchain to be able to get around greenwashing is also, so it's like use the human element and the technological element together, and then you're probably covering all bases.
100%, yes.
For the blockchain thing, it is super interesting because I only dug into blockchain just because so many people are asking, how do you really know? You can take an apple that's been grown with really low emissions associated with it, and you can take one that was grown in a greenhouse in New Zealand and then flown around the world 3 times, and you can do any chemical test on them you like. They're still just both apples. You don't know which one's which. And so one problem in the whole climate space is if you're trying to reduce emissions, say, I only want to buy apples that have been grown with really low carbon emissions. How do you know which one to buy? And that's what I think blockchain, exactly. It's
supply chain, yeah, V-chain. There's many supply chain blockchain projects which track everything along its process.
And it's indelible, right? Once it's had some experience, that gets indelibly marked, and no one can erase it. You can't cheat it, right?
Exactly.
There is I also know that blockchain, and the whole cryptocurrency space does take a lot of energy. And so right now, since the energy is often supplied by fossil fuels, it can have a downside there. And I know that there's a lot of effort in trying to understand what to do about that, right? So
we have different types of blockchains that create different types of energy, depending on the algorithms they use to compute the blocks. So Bitcoin is the grandfather chain, which is proof of work. That they do the most work to compute those blocks. But now we have Ethereum, which is the second one, where all the dApps are built on. All the applications are built on top of that. It's the most used blockchain right now, pretty much. And that's proof of work, but it's transitioning to proof of stake. It's going through proof of stake very soon. So proof of stake, yeah. It's a different consensus mechanism. So the way it produces the blocks, it's in a more efficient way. So now we have different blockchains, all these new layer ones, there's many of them. And they use proof of stake, proof of history. So these are much more efficient blockchains. It's just like when the light bulb came out. You know, when the first light bulb was around, it wasn't so efficient, but innovation happened, and that's what's happening with blockchain as well.
So you said you wanted me to explain what the difference between a snapshot mentality and a transition mentality was, and it's exactly that. It's how we, you know, what we're starting now, but what can we get to, and how can we make sure we're pushing it in the right direction? And energy efficiency for blockchains is definitely hugely important, not just for the cost, but also for the climate.
Yeah, and it's when art started becoming into the blockchain space and NFTs, that was the biggest topic, you know, and that was just creating FUD in the industry. But so a lot of people were putting a lot of intention into that.
Yeah. Tell me about the plastic space. So, because there was one week where I thought, I wonder if I can do without plastics for a week, and then I realized that I could do things like have, you know, bags at the supermarket that weren't plastic, or not take anything like that. And then I looked around my house at all the things that have plastic in them, shampoo bottles, or, you know, any of the containers that I already have. And I thought, well, do I just not touch them for the week? I mean, I've still got the plastic there. And then I started to realize, to my kind of dismay, that probably I could, if I went to a supermarket and took my own stuff and put the fruit into a bag and brought it home, the fruit's probably still been wrapped in plastic until it got to the supermarkets, had plastic sort of in its supply chain. And so I realized then that what I wanted to do in my talking about plastic is trying to see how to change the whole system of how it's used rather than individuals. And so I think I'm interested in this kind of this dichotomy. How do you change the system, like politics? And how do you change as an individual, and how do you match the two of them so that you can get them to add into something that's really powerful?
That's my question too, is how do you change the system? I know how to change myself and my kitchen and my bathroom of the plastic products. I can buy local, I can go to a bulk shop. You know, I can do that, but at some point I have to travel and I don't have that. You know, I can't change the grocery store. I mean, no, forget it. We have a possibilist attitude.
Well, here's what I think. I mean, I do think, but I like possibilists. People sometimes ask me if I'm an optimist or a pessimist, and I say I don't really like either of those labels because they're both fatalists. It sounds like the world is definitely going to change in a certain way. There's nothing you can do about it. If you're an optimist, it's because you're kind of generally sunny and you hope for the best. And if you're a pessimist, you're generally wintry and you fear for the worst, but you can't change it. Whereas I've been using that word possibilist to say that's what I describe myself as, because you can't predict the future, but you can create it. You can make. So what I was just thinking about that is how to marry the two. So what I do, you know, I've changed my electricity supplier to 100% renewable electricity.
Me too.
And I know that in terms of overall emissions for the country, it makes almost no difference, but it kind of makes a difference to me. And the same when I use my kind of carry cup for coffee, or when I use my water bottle instead of buying new water. Every time I touch it, it reminds me that this is important, and that helps give me the energy to push for the big changes that can happen. So I think that's how I'd see it, and I think it adds up to a new story. It adds up to a new narrative, and I think systems never change until narratives change. And so people will say, well, we don't have a business model, or it's too expensive, or we don't have the right political structure, or we don't, but all of those things were invented by people. And if we decide we want to do something differently, we can, but we need the story in our heads to realize it's possible and to understand how to do it, right?
It's been created by the old system and the people in it. We're recreating the system now. I really feel like this is, in this generation, the next 20 years, we're going to rewrite so many things. But I honestly think that, and I keep going back to crypto, I think it's going to blow that out of the water, just because there's a whole wealth transfer happening. Yeah. And when there's a wealth transfer, wherever the wealth is, they have the power. And also in this new system, the old system can't keep up. They don't have the tools to coexist in that new system. So where do I want to go with that? I want to ask you more questions while I have you here, because you have a lot of answers that I didn't have answers to before. I would love for you to meet Camille, my other co-founder, my co-nerd. We're all nerds. We're all nerds under the surface, aren't we? We're all nerds. I would really love for you to meet her, because there's a lot that we can move forward on.
I'd love that too. And I think when I'm thinking about, anyone who might be watching this or thinking about it, just like, what can I do and what should I do? I think if I'm thinking about what the biggest message is, I try to tell to people, when people would say to me, I've been talking about climate change for a really long time, and people say, what can I do? And I'd say, oh, change your light bulbs, or recycling. And I don't say that anymore. I say, actually, two things. First of all, talk to people you don't agree with, and try to be as open as possible to get people around the table. So that if you say it can be this way and only this way, and people feel shut out by that, they won't want to come and join in. But if you can really listen and understand where they're coming from and have a genuinely curious conversation, I think curiosity is a superpower in this. Then you can bring more people around the table. When you have more people around the table, it's not just that you can have bigger collective action, it's also you get better ideas. So that's one thing that I say, talk to people you don't necessarily agree with, and be as curious as you can. And the other thing is that everyone's got some kind of leverage. Everyone's got some way that they can do bigger influence than kind of just changing your light bulbs. I mean, some have got massive leverage, like you. And I give lots of talks. I talk to business leaders. I'm doing a TED talk in a few months, and all of those, they'll have big. And I'm talking at the COP meeting in Glasgow. The big climate meeting that's going to happen in Glasgow in November, and all of those will have hopefully influence. And yet everyone, just in how you buy and listen to your music, in how you save money. I mean, people don't even realize it's not very rock and roll subject, but pensions. Anyone who has a pension fund is investing loads of money, and usually doesn't even know where the money's invested. And if that fire hose of money stops pointing that way and starts pointing that way, it could put out a lot of fires that are burning now. And so I think, in your life, in the way that you talk about things, in your school, in your clubs, wherever, if you're just resetting this, going, we know what's happening, we know what needs to be done, and we can actually contribute to it. And if there's people like us helping make it easy to do that, I just feel like surely that's gonna change the world.
Well, it has to. We're possibilists, right?
Or we all go down in flames, and then.
Well, I guess there's another question for you. It's like, most people in the industry, I guess most people worldwide, they want change to happen, but a lot of times it does come down to finances as well. So I guess just, do you have any advice on, I understand being curious and asking a lot of questions on how to kind of change their view on that, or make it a priority. Some people want to, and then when it comes to actually taking action, they don't necessarily make it a priority.
Yeah, so I think that's where powerful champions can really help, and it's the champions and the messengers. We do all sorts of things that when the iPhone first came out, and I said, why would I want a camera on my phone? I've already got a camera. Why would I have a camera on my phone as well? And I haven't, I've got a camera somewhere in a cupboard now. I haven't touched it for ages. And the first reason I got it though was that kind of cool people around me were getting it, and I wanted it too. And then started using it, started realizing it's a really good product, and that I wanted more. And now I wouldn't dream of having a phone without a camera. That'd be so inconvenient. And so, I think that it's those two things. It's making it easy. But what we're trying to do with climate healing, make it easy. Give a product that people can actually say, okay, I get that, I can do that. So you take out all the uncertainty. And at the same time, having people who are cool say, this is what you should do.
Yeah, you gave me an idea.
Ooh. That sounds dangerous. Good. I like dangerous ideas.
No, it's just incentivizing. I thought of a way to, because we're talking with some big crypto companies that want to invest into the music industry, into just music and artists. So maybe there's a way we can incentivize artists to do plastic-free parties, and that will kind of offset or persuade and inspire events, event producers to go plastic free, since we can offset the costs from those partnerships.
You know what we have to do? We have to be cleverer than they were. And luckily, lots of them are pretty stupid. So hopefully we can do that. Or at least, even if we can't be cleverer, we need to be better storytellers. We got the best story. We've got the best story. This story is remaking the entire world. This is healing the earth. This is reversing climate change. This is looking at all the things that have given us stomachache for years and years and going, I will do something about that. And so will everyone else around me, and we will fix this. And that's the most powerful story. You can't get better than that.
So Gabrielle, I totally agree with you, and I want to go back to the meditating thing. You love to bridge gaps, and explore intersections. That's also what I love to do. That we need to bridge the gap because we're so much in our mind all the time. Anxiety, and this causes all the anxiety and depression. So also a lot of the work. I'm glad you started meditating. So we have two stories to tell. Because we need to bring humanity and ourselves back more into our heart and our second brain, which is down here. So we need, that's where we're bridging the gap, with Mother Nature and with our heart. That's where the magic is too.
Of course I agree. And it's basically the options are fear or love. And the fear is immensely powerful force, the second most powerful force in the universe. I'm not surprised it terrifies so many. I'm not surprised it blocks so many. It blocks me all the time. And the only force in the universe more powerful than fear is love. Love. And music is one of the most powerful ways of spreading it. It's because we engage with our hearts, not with our heads, when we're listening to music and when we're connecting to it. And so, that's all I got. You're a powerful force for love. Go and use it.
Yeah. It's actually every single cell in our body understands music. Yeah, because we're all resonant frequency. So with that, we have all the answers to make our music industry sustainable. Take that. We would love to find out those carbon removal advices that you gave. Because I have every DJ's contact in the whole entire music industry, and I can contact them and like, hey guys, we need to remove our carbons. All you guys driving, riding private jets, time to remove your carbons.
So cool. We will talk more. And in the meantime, what a treat. Thank you. I really loved this. I feel I'm going to go away feeling very inspired, and I will remember to meditate tonight.
Amazing. It was really nice to meet you, and I can't wait to pick up on all these conversations.
You bet. You too. Bye now.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Walker and Vivian, for that thought-provoking discussion. Lots of interesting points raised from our industry experts to digest and develop further. We now turn to our moderator, Kikelomo, who will introduce our speakers from the Association of Electronic Music, DGTL Festival, and a Greener Festival, who will provide a further insight and analysis.
Okay, I guess I'll do the little introductions now. So yeah, hello everyone, and welcome to the second edition of The Big Questions in collaboration with the International Music Summit, Beatport, Pioneer DJ, and the Association for Electronic Music. So in this monthly series, if you haven't watched it before, we'll be presenting a 45-minute unscripted conversation between well-known electronic music artists on a given topic, examining the most important issues facing the electronic music industry today. And then following these conversations will be an analysis of the conversation hosted by AFEM, featuring some of our members and industry experts picking up on the points raised by the artists or other industry experts, discussing them and developing them into key learnings and best practices and actions that the industry can adopt. So my name is Kikelomo. I'm a DJ, presenter, host, and curator, as well as the co-chair for the AFEM Working Group on Diversity and Inclusion, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. And today's discussion, the theme for today's discussion is environment and sustainability, featuring a candid discussion or conversation between DJ and electronic music artist BLONDISH and scientist and author Dr. Gabrielle Walker. So I've got a bunch of lovely faces with me in the Zoom chat today. So I have joining me for the analysis of the conversation are three industry experts who are providing their knowledge and experiences to help shape this discussion. So first up, we have Claire O'Neill, who is the co-founder and director of a Greener Festival with Arcadia Spectacular and the organizer of the Green Events and Innovations Conference, GEI. Also on the call is Mitchell van Dooijeweerd. Did I pronounce that right? I've been
Yeah.
practicing. He is the sustainability manager or sustainability coordinator for Digital Festival and Revolution Foundation. And we also have Ornella Vallana, beautiful name. And she is the communications manager of La Feria in Chile, which has announced that it is the first club in the world that will operate on clean energy and is 100% solar powered. So thank you everyone for joining this discussion today. How's everyone doing? All doing well?
All good.
Good.
Excited.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Great. And yeah, I think it would be great just to jump into kind of like the thoughts and the feelings around the conversation that we watched with Gabrielle and Blondish. I think everyone was kind of shocked by this UN Code Red for Humanity and this really this massive emphasis on the real need for change. And I'd be really interested to know kind of how this made you all feel, maybe maybe starting with Mitchell and going around with everyone else, how it made you feel and how you cope and process, but then also how you find reasons or what reasons you find to be optimistic.
So for me, the UN report was both feeling like happy that it's like communicated now, that it is code red and that we need to act right now. But the other thing is that it's really hard to see that we are that far already. But for me as a sustainability manager and from digital, it's good to see that what we are doing is on the right way and that what we are doing inspire others to really focus on climate change and acting in the right way. So for me, it was a good report to highlight the fact that we are doing the things that we are doing.
Well, for me, I really believe it was a moment important to actually understand that we have to do what we're doing right now a little bit stronger, a little bit faster in order to spread the word to everyone, not only on the industry side, on our daily lives, so that we can spread the actions that we are taking to more champions, as they say in the conversation with Blondish and Dr. Gabrielle. Like, we need to repeat the actions that we're taking in the industry to more places with more people and also with the younger generations. I feel optimistic on the side that, as Mitchell said, I'm happy that at least we're doing something. And actually, this is an opportunity to be optimistic. This chat, this conversation is certainly going to get the word out of what everyone's doing, and it's certainly going to inspire more people. So we're on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. With the IPCC report that came out, I mean, it was, I was happy to see it because it wasn't a surprise. It wasn't really new news for those that work in sustainability all the time. It was just another fantastic way to present and articulate it in no uncertain terms, which hopefully will oil the wheels a little bit, for want of a better expression, to help with governments, businesses and individuals to actually go, okay, let's stop messing about now. And we do all know that there's nothing like a deadline to get things done. So I feel like this is definitely going to be a few years of serious action. So whilst it's obviously not great news, it's also a great kick up the bum, I'd say. So I'm quite pleased to see the IPCC report.
Right. And I think one of the things that the IPCC report really emphasizes is the need to take action. And I think what would be great to get from this conversation that we're going to have over the next 40-ish minutes or so are some really key actionable points, maybe 5 points that we can use to kind of give us advice for the rest of the music industry. So maybe, we can keep that in mind. And I think from the discussion between Dr. Gabrielle and the Blondish, they kind of look at things from a macro perspective, so also from a business level, but also on an individual level. So maybe we can use that to kind of guide the discussion. So I think one of the interesting points, which is also quite interesting for me because it's something I'm struggling with at the moment. So Blondish and Gabrielle talk about the implications of traveling and the struggles to kind of juggle the obligations of, being in the industry that usually requires you to travel, but also having the desire to be more environmentally responsible. So I maybe open the question up to the round, whoever's brave enough to take it first. How do we improve the environmental credentials of the industry that is so dependent on travel as a function and is intrinsically linked to consumption in a way? Maybe Ornella, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the main things we can start changing in the way we do things now, especially in a region as it is South America, Latin America, is actually taking advantage of the local scene. Like, obviously we know the carbon footprint and the whole industry is very related to having international artists go in and out very quickly for fast tours. But now we can actually have a moment to take a look at what's happening in each country, to make these artists actually have a more space to develop. And also the opportunities now are much more more equal in terms of everything that happened with the streaming and everything. So at least one artist that's from South America doesn't have to go to Europe to actually get known and get his music listened to, because what just happened during the past year settled everything a little bit more for everyone. And we need to keep taking advantage of that. And in terms of flying in and out, I'm sure it also when all the tours, because now America's opening up again, but once it gets back to normal, that the tours are have a more important purpose than just go to the actual country and be there one night and play another one, but stay a little bit longer, maybe get involved with giving out the message, the same things that we're talking about right now, because that is actually going to start making the foundations of a more meaningful type of traveling and working in the end.
I think that that's a really valid point. You touched on so many good elements there. It's interesting because the conversation that we just heard was very much around narrative and story, and the story that we tell ourselves, and then the narrative that actually creates our actions, our frame of reference that we believe to be true, that then influences the way that we behave. And I think that it's very true that the narrative in our industry has become one that we are consumers, that our audience are consumers, our industry is built around encouraging consumption, whereas actually it's really about creativity and community and celebration. So if we can, as much as possible, like what you were just saying, for example, about bringing more purpose to where we're going and spending more time there, we don't have to stick to the same framework that we always had. So there are opportunities to not only reduce our emissions, but also really enhance the quality and depth of our experiences along the way. And that's not to say have less gigs. It's maybe to have more gigs, in fact. Why not visit 5 cities in one country rather than one? And then you tackle the audience travel at the same time. I think that another element within that as well kind of bounces back out to the macro environment, that every single industry is working on this now. So at the moment, this speedy travel, in, out, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of affair that we have often with our gigs is highly unsustainable, and therefore we need these removals of our emissions as well as reducing. But that is going to change, and there will be alternatives, but it's just not ready now. It's not ready in time. So we need to consider that. And also that impacts our well-being as well as environmentally. So I'm sure that any DJ who's gone to 5 countries in 3 days will say it is not actually a fun experience, at least by the 4th gig. You're not getting to enjoy yourself, your head's spinning, you're knackered. It's so I think that there's ways that we can change, but it starts with what we believe our industry is in the foundation.
Yeah, one of the big takeaways from the coronavirus crisis is that we were one of the first festivals that would be held in March, 2020. And then it was cancelled, and in 5 days we organized the digital event of our event, Digital. And we never had that much, that big audience in our event. So we had 5 million visitors at our events. And that opens up for us, wow, it's just so extreme that we can do something like this for 5 million visitors. But at the same time, we saw that it was not the experience that we want to give to our visitors. And we understand how important the festivals were during the pandemic. And so it's not only a party, but it's much more than that. A festival has a lot of purpose already, and especially some of them. And some of them are a little bit less, has a little bit less purpose, but some of them are really, really focusing on purpose. So that was a key takeaway for me in the pandemic as well. And therefore we focus on, okay, what is our event, and why do our visitors need our event? And therefore we go really in depth. And then we started to brainstorm, and we had a lot of conversation with all the different departments. And then kind of magic happened that it was not a sustainability part anymore where I was working, but the whole team was working on one big festival and was focusing on everything because we had the time. We were more happy to see each other. We were really close to each other, and that was really cool to focus on. Different types of teamwork and focusing on how can we make our event even more sustainable, and how can we give it more purpose, and the whole. And we had a lot of inclusivity trainings where we get really into depth in that purpose. So it was, I think, focusing on the consumption economy. We were really happy that we really have like a purpose in this life, and that the events really needs to stay, but we need to do it in the right way, and therefore we need to find solutions. And that's, I think that's the key takeaway from us, from the pandemic.
And Claire, what have your experiences been with the festival and trying to make it more, or making consumption more sustainable?
So one thing we try to do is to stop calling the audience or the participants consumers. Again, it's like that, trying to reframe the mind that actually you're a participant of events, not a consumer of what we're trying to sell to you. But I mean, it's quite a big question because we've been looking into festivals for 15 years. And obviously the last 18 months, as Mitchell just described, have really spun everything on its head. But what we began, the thing that sparked the initial interest in festivals and sustainability was because it provides this space out of the normal day-to-day life for a start. So that's a great opportunity to introduce other ways of doing things. Not in every case, but in many cases, it's bringing people back into nature as well. Obviously not for the city events, but it takes you under the elements at very least, which is good for getting outside of the kind of city life where you're just plugged into a tap and electricity at a switch, and your cooker, like everything just available on tap essentially. And then also the opportunity for trying new ways of doing things, whether that's in infrastructure, such as how your sewage, waste, water is planned, or whether it's in systems, in the way that you communicate or people move. And these are the kind of things that to do on a city level would be extremely expensive and risky if you didn't know they were going to work. Whereas with festivals, it's such a fertile ground for experiment, that it's a clear place for trialing elements of different ways of living. And then add to that the fact that festivals are this coming together of community, which is so important on when we talk about sustainability. There's the very practical way of looking at it, like for instance, reducing how many tons of waste, reducing your litres of fuel, etc., etc. But fundamentally, it's really our relationship with our environment, and our relationship with each other, and recognizing that that is actually all one thing. We're not separate from the environment, we're very much a part of it. And to feel that and to recognize that, we also need to have connection with each other, because so long as we feel detached and isolated and separate, then we're not going to naturally just live in harmony with the environment. So this is why festivals are so fundamentally important. And when you look at the trying to break out of the consumer narrative and the consumer frame of mind, any high street in the world, I'm going to say that, any high street in most countries, all of the buildings are about come and buy something. We have products for you to buy, come and consume. That's what's being facilitated to people, is consumption. Whereas most festivals don't do that. You have other places where you have really amazing creative activities to do, or you're dancing, you're celebrating, you're doing something other than consuming actually while you're there. So it's not such a practical thing necessarily. We have seen a lot, and I can talk a lot if you wish about things like renewable energy and so on, but I think that that connection is probably our most important and urgent element at this point in time.
Yeah, and to elaborate on the testing ground for cities. So at Digital, we are in the middle of Amsterdam, and we see our event as a living lab for the whole city and for circular innovation as well, because we need a lot of innovation, and we need to change the whole behavior from linear to circular. So we are redesigning and rethinking all the systems on our festival from linear behavior to circular behavior. One of those, one of the practical things are like the hard cup system, where you have like a deposit system with where the visitor is responsible to bring their cup back, for example. But next to that, we have renewable energy. We have a circular food court where we serve plant-based food, and the visitors are asked to bring their natural and disposable but biodegradable plates and cutlery back to the recycle point. And then inside of the visitors on site, within 24 hours, we make compost out of it. And that's really reflecting on, that is reflecting on their behavior in the change from the linear to the circular economy, I think. And therefore, we can rethink and we can design the whole event, because we build it and we break it down afterwards. So it's a perfect testing ground for the circular economy.
Amazing. And I think, so with this talk of switching from linear to circular systems, and Claire, you mentioned about things, talking about new ways of trying things, this kind of like innovation perspective. Ornella, I would love to hear, and actually also thinking about the conversation that we just watched, you know, Blondish and Gabrielle were talking about things like CO2 diamonds and hydrogen planes. So yeah, Ornella, I would love to know if you have any thoughts or experiences or even people working in sustainability that you feel are important to highlight, and any other innovations that are kind of exciting you, particularly in the music space.
Sure, thanks. Well, actually, from the conversation from Gabrielle and Blondish, I really got a very emotional on the part about storytelling, because when I listened to what they had to say, I understood that obviously everything that's happening, at least in my environment, regarding my labor and my work at La Feria Club, is really, really important. And this is a great instance, and we're really thankful for being able to let people know what we're doing, so it can be an example for others and set the path forward. So for those people that don't know, La Feria is a club that's been around for 20 years. It's located in Santiago, Chile. It's been part of the culture since ever, at the start of many now renowned artists. And the club had started making some little changes that maybe seemed nowadays kind of obvious. Like, for example, eliminating the straws and getting all the tickets 100% digital. Well, that maybe 3 or 4 years ago, or maybe more, wasn't so obvious. Every little change, the people had to learn how to adopt to them, and we went forward. And we got to a point where we said, okay, we need to look even further on. And at that moment, the vision of the club got along with the vision of a brand that's Budweiser. They made a commitment in the World Economic Forum to get all their beers, all the production 100% made with clean energy by 2025. And with that vision, what they did was approach to the club and said, okay, what better instance than to use music to get this message out to the people, not about what they're doing, but how do we get this idea, the vision that we have, the vision that you guys have as a club for going greener and doing things that are better for the world while we work. How do we get this message to the everyday lives of each person that attends our events and our community? And that's how in 2019, in May, the club went to a process of about 3 or 4 months about becoming the first club to operate with solar panels. There are 35 panels on the roof of the club, which are useful for all the consumption that the club needs. And when the club is not functioning, obviously all this energy goes back to the grid, and there's the balance between what we use and what we give out to the whole system. Actually, now we have a lot of energy accumulated, so we need to start pumping it up again out. So it was a great milestone to be able to do it, and it sets an example that it's possible, that it's very important for every venue to think about this, and if necessary, to partner up with other parts of the sector. Like, if there's one thing we learned also with the pandemic is about interdependence. And every environment, little or small, like our community or the world that we live in, and we can't do things ourselves sometimes. And that's why this project that's a co-creation actually got this happening, you know, like the first club with solar power. And I'm sure more instances like this can come up around the world. And I like to highlight it a lot because it's something that came from South America, and it's not usual typically in the industry. So the more that we are communicated, such like in what we're doing right now, it's very useful, because it's not only in some parts of the world, it's like everyone is doing something. We just need to talk more and join forces and go even forward faster.
Amazing. And I actually wanted to touch upon something that Blondish mentioned. So she was talking about dealing with kind of like the capitalistic element of the industry and some of the challenges involved with that. And I think all of you are working in cultural spaces that are kind of doing something good for the community, but obviously have to operate in a system that's based on kind of making money. That's the nature of our society. But I would love to hear your thoughts. Thinking about, as the world is currently reopening, how can the electronic music industry make sure that we don't go back to the old pre-COVID patterns of ridiculous amounts of travel and excessive consumption and excessive waste? Maybe Claire, you would like to give your thoughts first, and then open up to everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in some ways we're not going to be permitted to, so that's helpful, either through border controls and still the lag of what happened with the pandemic, but also there's international laws. There are laws coming into most nations now about restricting our emissions and curbing plastic, etc., whether they are enforced and they're quick enough or strong enough, and whether the policies actually follow the legislation is another question. So I won't get into that just now. But to bring it back to the electronic music industry itself, I mean, for a start, to do business as usual and go back to as things were when we know that it was fraught with problems is really boring. Like, wouldn't it be much more exciting and interesting to build something new and better? And then there's the other fact that our business models, we created them, we've invented them. It's not like they were handed to us when we were born. Well, they were in our case, because it was the dinosaurs of the music industry before us that made it, right? But no, I'm just joking. So we can change those models. And it is very true that you need to pay the bills. It needs to work. People need to be paid and need to eat. The businesses need to run. And so you can't just forget about the money and follow an ethical ideology. But you can make the money work for what we're trying to achieve. One of the things I've been suggesting recently is to look at your budget for whatever it is, whether it's your tour, your festival, whatever it may be, and see if you can convert each line of that budget to go, is this being spent on fossil fuels, or is it being spent on creativity? And that can help you if that's your intention, to make changes so that, for example, you might add an extra 3 days into design so that you can lose 2 trucks off a tour, you know, or you might add an extra few days into rehearsal so that you can take less of a team flying around the world, for example, you know, so trying to just rebalance where the money is applied. I think another thing that's really going to help in this instance, and we've been experiencing this, and it's making me very happy, is that most of the industry, whatever sector, like whatever element they're in, whether it's lighting, sound, trucking, the transportation, whether it's the agents, managers, artists, promoters, people are really engaged and want to make the change. And when everybody gets the signal from one another that we all want to do it, none of us know how it's going to work. No one's got all the answers. But if we're all willing to make the effort and we're all willing to adjust and change together, then we've got much more possibility and strength in numbers. And to just always be prepared to challenge your assumptions that something is how it has to be, because it's probably just a learned behavior that we can easily change if we're aware of ourselves.
Yeah, for us it is that we have set our goals. So we want to be circular as a festival in 2020 already. So we are working on that constantly to reduce emissions, to get to zero waste. And we try to have all our suppliers on that goal too. So therefore we are organizing like circularity conferences. Therefore we make briefings to get them on board. Therefore we do roundtables. Therefore we share our knowledge, all those things that we are doing. And I think just what you said, Claire, that everybody is sending those messages that they wanted to do it in a more efficient way, or in a way that it is not harmful for the environment. And I think that's all is becoming more clear, and especially with the UN report as well. And I think there are so much signs that we need to do it different than 2 years ago. So therefore, I think with a lot of knowledge sharing from the front runners, a lot of knowledge sharing from some specialists, and getting, as Gabrielle said, everyone around the table and everything on the table, then we will go forward instead of backward. So I'm really optimistic for that.
Exactly. There's a lot of willingness, and we are part of the industry, and all the people that work in this, obviously we also have a responsibility, because we can help communicate the how. Like, we are, let's say, one step forward of the normal person that goes to the events and says, okay, I'm making changes in my life. Like, maybe I stopped eating meat, or I don't use much plastic as before, but what does that have to do with partying? Like, we should have, we have the tools, and we are still learning also on this way, how to get the message to people, tell them, like, take them by the hand and tell them, okay, this is what you can do in party mode, or while you're enjoying yourself, but you can also help reduce or not use things that you did. Let's just not do the things the same way we did it before. And we are really studying how to make those differences.
It's such an important point. I just wanted to comment to that, because it is bringing the people on board, or also just empowering and connecting with all of these millions of people that we touch every year. Not literally, but you know what I mean. And if we've got our own house in order as much as we can, then our voice is going to be so much stronger to give those messages, because if we're not actually looking at ourselves and pulling our own socks up, then it's going to be very insincere. But also, that doesn't mean that we need to be perfect and have everything sorted, because nobody is. But to just be honest and open and actually speak to one another like adults. You know, we could teach the politicians to do that as well one day. But I think it's such a good opportunity that we can't miss. And it's actually not just an opportunity, it's a responsibility that we have to use this platform during these deadline hours.
Yeah, and I think that during the pandemic, we all came together much closer as a whole festival and event sector and the whole music industry as well, because I spoke a lot of we had a lot of online knowledge sharing meetings, but also I have a lot of contact with artists as well, such as we are here now too. But for example, 2 weeks ago, I launched a new campaign for sustainable aviation fuel, and we got a lot of the whole conversation about flying and about traveling with artists or from the festivals and all. It was always hard to have that conversation, but now it was actually we were able to have the conversation, and we were able to find solutions together, and we were like really bonded together instead of that we were far from each other and that we were like afraid for a kick for like a backfire or something. Now everybody was open for discussion and was trying to inspire their fan base, or everybody was looking for opportunities to do it more sustainable. And I think especially in the Netherlands, it was kind of an really excited last Saturday that we had the Unmute campaign. I don't know if you've seen that. It was kind of a love parade through whole Amsterdam with all the festival organizers together, and it was really feeling as like we are one as a whole music industry, and that was so nice to feel.
Fantastic. It looks amazing, actually. I saw the pictures in the news, and it's also kind of inspiring to see so many people coming together and kind of like using their united voice to kind of speak up about something, you know? And I'm also I'm making notes in the background, and I've picked up already a lot of amazing points that we can take away as an industry. So from taking advantage of local scenes, when looking at things like travel, or reducing the emphasis on consumption, or being open-minded to changing perspectives and challenging assumptions, looking at the bigger picture, like looking at what's going on behind the scenes. For example, like looking at supply chains and sourcing, and also sharing the knowledge from front runners and kind of using this to empower and connect people throughout the scene. So I think we're already on a really good track for loads of actions we can take away, but I feel like we can get a lot more. I think we've spoken a lot about kind of the macro perspective and the business level of the industry, and I'd really love to drill down into the individual level. I think Blonde has mentioned about how she uses her leverage as an artist to really bring about this change, particularly with enforcing some of her plastic-free parties that she's done. She spoke about the club in Ibiza, and really emphasizing for them to kind of get on board with this. And I would love to talk a little bit more about what we can do as artists or as individuals in the industry to kind of like drill down change. So I know there's a lot of talk about green riders and artists using them and really pushing sustainable change. And I know, Claire, with AFEM, you're doing a lot of work around that. Maybe you could expand a little bit more around that, about the work that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to apologise now in case a drill suddenly starts going off next to me. My neighbours are doing some building work, and I can hear them just getting started. So with AFEM, we've been working for probably about a year with a lot of effort being put in as well by Camille from Bye Bye Plastics to bring together all of the different green, blue, eco riders that we have around the industry and kind of get it down to its fundamentals, so that can be shared open source with anybody who wants to take in this kind of template, I guess, of requests, and also not just requests, but almost commitments from what the individual themselves will do. What we're trying to do with that is essentially spark the conversation between all those different departments. And it's something that as AGF now, with a number of tours, we've been going in to implement that by having discussions with all of the suppliers, well, starting with the designer, the agent, artist, management, production, and then starting to speak to each one of the suppliers, such as lighting, sound, trucking, whoever it may be that's on the team or within the event. And then all of the venues or the festivals, everywhere that they're going to go, so that we can make sure that everybody's on the same page, but not just going in and saying, you must do this way, because actually you'll speak to one of the suppliers and they have got their whole own world that they understand much better than you do. And so it's good to say, okay, well, this is fundamentally what we're trying to achieve. Let's say it's reducing energy consumption and weight on the trucks. And then they can tell you, okay, this is how we can achieve that if this department here will do X, Y, and Z. And then the same with the venues, especially across different countries. You might have very different situations, different waste infrastructure of a country, different power supply of a country, different transport networks, different cultures. And so there is not a one size fits all. So this opportunity for communication between every little link on the chain is crucial. And that again facilitates that empowerment, because every conversation that we have, it opens the doors and says, this is the direction of travel we want to go in. And you find more often than not, you're pushing on a very open door. And then we learn a lot more quickly as well, because you're getting to find out what is the reason that this isn't already happening? What are the obstacles, or what are the beliefs that actually aren't true that we can now overcome because we're having the conversation? So that is really the purpose behind the concept of the Green Riders, and then how they're being implemented on the road. I'm going to stop there in case anyone wants to comment on it before I go on a monologue.
About what Claire said about suggesting, like, getting these Green Riders and then introducing them to every promoter, artist, festival. Obviously, at first, maybe a few years ago, it would be more difficult. But now, as Mitchell said, there's a great disposition from everyone after what we've gone through. It's like, this is the big story of how we're going to change humanity. Maybe it sounds like, oh, wow, yeah, but it is, oh, wow. I mean, every story has like the context, then comes the drama, and then comes like getting out of the drama and the benefit and what we learned. Okay, the drama passed. Now we got new knowledge, things that we can do. And obviously everything will be a suggestion, but I'm sure that this time it will be even faster to adopt these measures. On my point of view, from La Feria as a club, as a promoter or booker, actually the adoption of these Green Riders will be much quicker than maybe if Claire would have reached out to us 3 years ago. It would have been like, why, how, I don't know, this is not possible. Or maybe if BLONDISH comes over to the club and say, okay, this is what, this is the proposal for the booth without plastic and how you can expand it to all areas of the club. Okay, it will be much easier to actually do it than to be thinking all our things on our own, you know, because the next steps, at least for us, is that to make the whole club, every workflow, every action that comes out sustainable, or at least the least waste possible, and to actually take care of whatever we can dispose correctly. But that's the next steps. Okay, we got the main part covered, the music, the lights, the whole electricity system. That's great, but there's more to do. And regarding plastic, and yeah, it's a bit more difficult maybe in a club, but if we are on this together, I can share experiences with Mitchell, with Claire, and they can share with us, and the same thing can repeat towards the entire ecosystem, not only in English, also in Spanish, in all languages possible, because that also is very, very, very important.
It is. And so we work towards this circular festival, and therefore a circular artist, an artist journey needs to be circular too, and the backstage too. So we thought about that a long time. We had a lot of meetings about it, and we came to some interventions to make it more sustainable or even circular. So therefore we came, okay, first artists need to come to our event. We want to have them like traveling zero emissions. So if that's not possible, then we need to find options to reduce those emissions. For example, if they are flying, because it's an unavoidable flight, then we replace the fuels with bio-kerosene, sustainable aviation fuel. And then if they are at the airport or at the train station, then we pick them up with electric vehicles. And then from then we bring them to an hotel. We choose the hotel in Amsterdam, which is the most sustainable and circular. And it's just really low impact at that hotel. And then from the hotel the next day or the same day, no matter what, we are bringing them again with an electric car. And from then we are bringing them to the festival, and then they play their DJ set on the whole set is powered by renewable energy, the whole stage. And from them they're getting some food, and that's all plant-based. and they have like a menu for their rider instead of like I want to have Mexican tequila, for example. We have a local rider with for example a gin which is solar produced. We have a lot of local products that they can choose, and most important that we can also process in our waste stream, because that's really important. You can have like the green rider where you can ask for, I know no plastic, but choose for tetra, for example, but we don't have an option to process that, then it's still not circular. So you need to align the rider with the processing methods of the festival and their processor. So yeah, that was basically what we worked on in the whole circular artist journey, and it was really cool. And we tried to get everybody on board in the next event that we're gonna do. But the first responses were really nice.
Sounds fantastic. I'm really excited to see what comes about and what happens on the festival. When is the next festival actually?
It should be 11th and 12th September, but it is cancelled. So it will be in October during ADE. And otherwise it will be the festival in April again during Easter. Okay,
amazing. We have just under 5 minutes left of the chat. I'm really inspired by a lot of the points and conversations that have been going on. So I want to ask one question and hear your thoughts about it. So I think there's a common theme that's come up about kind of like people being used as tools and like being advocates and being used for activism, but also this kind of sense of community about bringing people together, knowledge sharing, really inspiring people to kind of make change and bringing that collective effort, which I think is actually imperative to change the direction that we're heading in terms of climate. So I know that the electronic music scene was built based on community, and some people would maybe argue that the original spirit behind it has been lost to consumerism and the selfie generation. So how can we harness the spirit of community and togetherness and galvanize it to provide some form of positive progress on environmental issues? Maybe Ornella, you want to give your thoughts first?
Yeah, sure. I think we just have to look a little bit deep inside ourselves and understand with time, because this is a very personal process, but when it hits you, once you really understand what's happening with the world and take conscious, you can actually understand that every single thing you do in your life on your daily basis or when you're having fun can go towards a better path, especially now that everyone is like into the same mood. Maybe all this thing that happened, it's very interesting to see how the world has shifted totally towards a new vision, at least to take responsibility and consciousness with nature and everything we have to do. Let's also listen to the younger ones, because we can teach them some rules, how to do this, that, okay, but they can teach us a lot more. So there's also a good thing to catch there.
Who wants to go next? Maybe Mitchell?
Yeah, I think we need to be happy with every step everybody's taking, and we need to show solutions. And next to that, we need to communicate with each other, yeah, try to start a movement and share love with each other. And I think that's the most important thing. And I think music unites, and I think we can inspire a lot of people and within the music industry. So artists, take your stand. Promoters, take your stand, and yeah, so everybody should do it, and everybody should be part of the movement and be part of the revolution, I think.
Yeah. I think how we harness the sense of that sense of community is to start actually living it and to treat each other in that way. So whether it's a relationship between an artist and agent or promoter, or the crew, the team, your communications with one another on a day-to-day basis, actually start living that. So rather than the macho environment of trying to be harder, faster, louder, stronger, more powerful, we need to move away from that and actually start to be a bit more caring. But I think it's also important to look at, well, what is it that we're trying to achieve as well, and how can we do it quickly? Community, yes, absolutely. But everyone here has touched upon the three big factors, which are 80% of our impacts as individuals, which are food, transport, and energy. And so if we can all just make sure that we're taking care of each other to harness the culture of community, and then look at energy, transport, food, we can change all of those on an individual level, and that can spread out through our businesses or whatever it may be. And whatever we can't deal with right now, because we still live in a fossil fuel dependent environment, then like Gabrielle and Blondish were saying, we need to remove whatever it is that we can't stop at the moment. And that is something that needs to be done collaboratively as well. It isn't just one person's responsibility, it's all of us equally. So if we can come together and say, okay, this is the impact that we've had, this is what we've emitted, this is what we can remove, this is what we can do now to reduce, the rest we're going to team together and remove it because we're running out of time. So I thought it was important to say that.
Definitely.
Fantastic. Here. And I think maybe just to end, I would really like to kind of bring attention to one of the things that Dr. Gabrielle mentioned in the conversation, talking about not being an optimist, not a pessimist, but being a possibilist, and really emphasizing the fact that you can't predict the future, but you can build it, which I think is something that everyone should kind of carry in their minds when thinking about what they can do on the individual level and a big level, right? So
Yes.
yeah. Indeed. So yeah, I'd like to thank Mitchell, Claire, and Ornella for joining us for this conversation today. I hope everyone who's been watching has found it useful, and will take some of the learnings and lessons forward and kind of moving around in the music industry and electronic music. And yeah, thank you for tuning into the Big Questions, and see you for the next session.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Big thank you for tuning in to the Big Questions, created by the International Music Summit, curated in partnership with She Said So, and presented in association with Pioneer DJ, Beatport, and the Association for Electronic Music. It's important to us that this series is curated by both us and you. To let us know if you'd like to speak as part of the Big Questions series, you can visit the IMS website, where you will see a full list of the topics, and you can nominate your speaker choices and catch up on previous episodes. Please tune in next month, where we'll be deep diving into the topic of diversity and inclusion in electronic music. Thanks for listening.
We trust each other.